Good morning, it's August 23rd, and this is To My Liberal Friends. You know, facts don't lie. Opinions are opinions, but facts are facts. And it's time to address what Donald Trump said in his latest false claim. I know all of you Trump supporters eat up every word he says, but truth is, facts don't lie. On his social media, Trump posted that he won Georgia in 2016, doing a fantastic job as president and getting millions more votes in 2020 than a sitting president ever had. He shockingly lost Georgia. Then he went further saying, quote, all this despite winning nearby Alabama and South Carolina in record-setting landslides, end quote. And he concluded the post by saying, does anybody really believe I lost Georgia? I don't. Now this is Trump bluster at its best. Trump lost Georgia fair and square in 2020 by 11,779 votes. And his claim that he won South Carolina and Alabama in record landslides is not even close to the truth. Numerous previous candidates have earned a far larger margin of victory in South Carolina and Alabama than Trump did in 2020. Even Trump himself won each state by a larger margin in 2016 than he did in 2020. A fact that contravenes his insinuation that his 2020 failure in Georgia was mysteriously at odds with a better-than-ever performance elsewhere in the region. The facts are that Trump was losing ground in each of these states when you compare it to 2016, and if he would simply look at the real numbers, he would quit making a fool of himself by saying things that are blatantly false. The decline in Trump's Georgia margin between 2016 and 2020, about 5.4 percentage points, was larger than his declines in South Carolina, 2.6 points, and Alabama, 2.3 points, both of which he won in both elections, but that does not suggest that anything nefarious happened in Georgia. States are simply different. Adjacent states often have social, economic, and political differences that can lead to divergences in their voting habits. There are other sets of neighboring states where the election results diverge between 16 and 20. For example, Trump lost Minnesota by about 7.1 points in 2020, only 5.6 points worse than in 2016, while winning neighboring North Dakota by 33.4%, only about 2.4% worse than he did in 2016. The point is, he went down in each of those states. Now, that's not a sign that something nefarious occurred in Minnesota. Again, those two states are not identical. But since Trump likes to point to South Carolina as his focus point, let's look at what happened in the Palmetto State. In 2016, Trump won South Carolina over Hillary Clinton by a margin of 14.3 percentage points. Fast forward to 2020, and Trump again won South Carolina, but this time by a margin of 11.7 points. And that's a decline of about 2.6. So to say he won a landslide, when in fact his margins were shrinking, is simply a fantasy that exists in the mind of Donald Trump. But Trump doesn't stop there. Of course, he has to embellish his own record by saying he set records with his winning in the state by a landslide. But history will show some differing numbers. In 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt won the state with 96% of the vote. And in 1936, he followed it up with 97% of the vote. Now that's a record, and by any definition would be considered a landslide. But since this was a generation ago, why not look at some numbers from more recent elections? What you will find is that his winning margin was smaller than other presidents who won the state. George W. Bush won South Carolina by 16 points in 2000 and followed up with 17 points in 2004. His father had done even better in 1988, winning the state by a margin of 24 percentage points. Ronald Reagan won the state by 28 percentage points. If you see where I'm going, you begin to realize that Donald Trump makes some number up and throws it out, declaring it to be the true number, while in any regard to the real facts. The same as occurred in South Carolina was true in Alabama, the other state that Trump uses as an example. In 2016, Trump won Alabama by 27.7 percentage points. Now that would be considered a landslide victory. But in 2020, that number fell 2% to him winning by only 25 percentage points. Still a major landslide, but also not a record. And if you go back in history, both FDR and Woodrow Wilson blew those numbers off the charts, winning Alabama with a 74% victory for FDR and Wilson by just over 50 percentage points. But if we focus on Georgia, where Trump said there was massive voter fraud as the sole reason he lost state, we see that the decline in his percentage was more than enough to lose by the 11,000 votes he lost the state with. Trump has said that he would hold a news conference to reveal irrefutable evidence of fraud in the Peachtree State, but later called off the event. These comments by Trump are indicative of his personality, where everything he touches or does has to be the biggest and best, at least in his mind. When he was first inaugurated, he boasted that more people came to his inauguration than to Barack Obama's. Now, those of us who lived in Washington, D.C. at the time and were downtown for the event just chuckled. I would guess it was less than half. Obama's inauguration was transformative as the first black president. The estimates for Obama's first inauguration were about 1.7 million people. His second drew about 1 million. The estimates for Trump were somewhere between 800 and 900. And if you look to draw 809,000, I should point out. And if you want to draw a real contrast, I suggest you look at the way Obama transferred power to Trump and how he acted in transferring power to Biden. The Obamas, in keeping with tradition, invited Trump to the White House and attended his inauguration. Obama, no matter what you think of him as president, left office graciously and kept with the traditions of transferring power. But Donald Trump showed no such graciousness and did not attend Biden's inauguration, instead went on a rant about how the election had been stolen from him. This has been Donald Trump's failing for all of his life. Had he accepted the loss in 2020 graciously, he would have had the support of millions more people in 24 race, but they can all remember him acting like a petulant child who did not get his way, and so he threw a tantrum. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe or recommend it to your friends.